Sky Sports did an article over the weekend stating that West Ham wish for David Moyes to remain as manager next season. It was written by Cava, who used to have really good sources at West Ham. He used to speak to David Sullivan. It wasn't really a secret. He didn't even try and hide it, to be honest with you. That seems to have stopped in the last couple of seasons for whatever reason, but he's done the article. Now, what's different between this one and the updates we've had in the last month, say? Those ones have always had clauses attached to it that West Ham would perhaps keep Moyes on beyond the summer as long as he won the Conference League, as long as West Ham avoided relegation. Now, there was none of that in this article. It was just quite blunt, which is West Ham are hoping that Moyes stays next season. They're intending on having a meeting to get what David Moyes' plans are, and that they hope that he sees out his contract as West Ham manager. Obviously, he's just got a little over 12 months to run. Next season will be his last one, unless he signs a new deal. Now, there was no talk of a new deal in said article either. And I have concerns about a manager in his last year of his contract at any club, not just West Ham, not just Premier League, any club. And I'll do that in a different video because that's a general sweeping statement and it's not specific to David Moyes at West Ham United. But the article had no clauses, which would suggest two things. A, that they assume we're going to be safe in the Premier League, which I think is a fair assumption. Hopefully Liverpool beat Leicester tonight and that's that. But I think it's a fair one. We're 500 to 1 to get relegated. So you're watching this thinking, oh, shush, we're going to go down. All I can say is go put your money where your mouth is and get that 500 to 1 on West Ham to get relegated. If you genuinely believe it's going to happen, there's a lot of money to be made. I won't be putting my money on it. Let's put it that way. So I think the assumption is that we'll be playing Premier League football next season. But that has to win the Conference League is gone. And I believe it. I believe the article. I'm not sure David Moyes' job relies on winning the Conference League. Should it? Yes, I think it should. You know, last week the report was that Moyes has to win the Conference League if he wants to be manager next season. And I like that. I like that messaging. Put the pressure on him. Make him go and win it. But I think what he showed on Sunday was he's prioritising the Conference League. I think if we were to lose, and when I say lose, I don't mean lose the final. I mean we get knocked out on Thursday. So we get knocked out Thursday night and we finish 16th in the Premier League. I still think Moyes will be here next season. And it comes down to David Sullivan. It doesn't actually come down to Moyes' achievements. I think if he was to win the Conference League, you would argue that it's because he's won the Conference League he's still here. But if we were to not do that and Moyes was to be the manager, I think it comes down to David Sullivan. It comes down to David Sullivan's lack of ambition and lack of ability. Lack of ability as a Premier League chairman. The ability to discover who the next manager should be and the ability to go and attract that manager and bring him to West Ham as well. Sullivan has shown very little in his tenure at West Ham and even before that Birmingham City that he knows a good manager, that he can pick out a good manager. His best successes as picking managers at West Ham, first one was Sam Allardyce, which I would suggest is not a very difficult thing to do, to go get Sam Allardyce when he was sort of prime Allardyce at that time to get us into the Premier League. I think it was quite a safe bet, but he did it, so fair play. It was the right manager to go get, and I think he kept him for the right time. Possibly one season too long, but he gave us Premier League stability. Sullivan got that right, bang on. David Moyes' second time. The first time, listen, he kept us up. Like I said, I don't think it was a difficult job. The second one, the one we're in right now, he's got that appointment right. But I think he's got it right by luck. When we went and got Moyes back, it wasn't because Sullivan believed he was going to lead us to European football. It's because Sullivan couldn't find anybody else to come and work for him. It was an appointment of desperation. An appointment of desperation for David Moyes because no other club had gone and got him. An appointment of desperation by David Sullivan because no other manager was willing to work with him. Sullivan got lucky. Back-to-back European campaigns was not on the agenda. When Moyes was rehired by David Sullivan, that was not a plan to get into European football. It was just keep us in the Premier League and keep us in the Premier League and keep us in the Premier League. That has worked. But getting into European football was a stroke of luck and not a stroke of genius by David Sullivan. David Sullivan deserves very little credit for us playing European football as far as I'm concerned. That credit goes to David Moyes and the players, and that is that. It's got nothing to do with Sullivan. We're almost there. So, in spite of David Sullivan, arguably. Yes, he's backed David Moyes this summer, but we were already in European football. We were in European football prior to that. We've just finished our Europa League campaign. We'd qualify for the Conference League And then we spent the 200 million. So yes, he's put his money where his mouth is and backed David Moyes eventually. And it came off the back of success. So anyway, I think Moyes will be here because of Sullivan, but also if we were to win the Conference League, I will say this, if West Ham win the Conference League, I hope we do, clearly. I think we will. I still think we will win this tournament. I think Moyes deserves to stay. Now, that does not mean I want him to stay. We'll get onto that in a second. Do not twist my words. Do not misquote me, because I did a video about 3 weeks ago saying Sullivan will think he was right keeping David Moyes, because you look at all the clubs in the relegation zone, the three teams that get relegated this season will have changed their manager. Southampton have changed their manager twice. Whoever goes with them. Leeds, they've changed their manager twice. Leicester City have changed their manager once. Everton have changed their manager once. Whoever goes down, they will have changed their manager. The three teams that have stayed up, and I'm banking on Forest staying up here, us, Forest and Bournemouth, did not change their manager. Stuck with them. So when I did that video, I said Sullivan will have watched the game the night before, which was Everton-Leicester. Both crap. They were both unbelievably bad, but it made for a fantastic game to watch as a neutral. Sullivan would have sat there thinking, I've done the right thing sticking by David Moyes and not changing manager. And then people started to say, well, you like Moyes now. I did not say that at all. I said Sullivan will think he was right, and that was that. Do you know something? If we stay up and we win the Conference League, Sullivan was right. David Sullivan made the right call. If we win the Conference League, David Sullivan is 100% justified in not sacking David Moyes last month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I wanted him sacked. I'll put my hands up and say I was wrong, because I thought there was a possibility of getting relegated. I've only ever thought we would go down for about 3 or 4 days. It was when Newcastle thumped us 5-1 at the London Stadium. After that game, I thought we're going to go down here. And then the next game, whatever it was, I flip-flopped back to, we'll be okay. Now, I've never thought we were getting relegated, bar that small period. But while I think Sullivan was correct to stick by David Moyes, I still want to see David Moyes sacked in the summer. I still want, even if he was to win the Conference League, I still want him sacked. And yesterday summed it up for me, that loss against Brentford. And it's not because we got beat, because let me just be clear again. I don't mind the fact that we got beat by Brentford yesterday. I think David Moyes did the right thing with the starting 11. When that starting 11 came out, I was delighted, because it wasn't the team. I wasn't looking forward to seeing the team play. I wasn't looking forward to seeing us play Brentford. I was looking forward to the game on Thursday night, the second leg of a semi-final. And that team yesterday showed me that Moyes is all in for this cup. He was prioritising the trophy. And I was delighted to see it, because I want to win this trophy more than anything. We've not had a trophy for over 40 years now. If Moyes wins it, does Moyes deserve next season? Yes, I think he does. I mean, some people could argue he actually deserves a new contract for bringing a trophy to West Ham. We can't. We've not had a trophy for... Again, I hate doing disclaimers, but I want to be clear here. I do not want to see David Moyes get a new deal. I want him sacked. But yesterday almost took all the reasons I want Moyes to go and put it into 90 minutes yesterday. And it wasn't the fact that he rested everybody. It wasn't the fact we lost to Brentford. But what it was watching our B team. Let's just call it the B team. The B team. It was actually, it is our B team. Do you know why it's our B team? Because after the game, David Moyes stated that he's got 13, 14 players and it would be wrong for him to flog them. Essentially, what David Moyes had just done, in my opinion, it's an admission of failure. He's basically said, I've got a squad, I've got a big squad, so much so that a couple of weeks ago, we had our starting 11, we had our 9 players on the bench, and Ben Johnson was not in the team. We had 21 fit senior players. That doesn't include Gianluca Scamacca, obviously. That doesn't include any of the youngsters, such as Mubama. We had 21 fit senior players to play. We had to leave Ben Johnson out the squad completely. There wasn't enough space in the team for him. But despite that number, despite spending 200 million in the last 12 months, David Moyes last night basically said, I've got 13 or 14 players that I can use, and that is it. Well, in my opinion, that's an admission of failure in the transfer market, but also squad management. David Moyes has been here for 3.5 years now. That is a long, long, long time. In the Premier League, that is ages. I spoke about it earlier in the Patreon video, and off the top of my head, I tried to think of managers who've been at their club longer than David Moyes. I should probably have done a little bit of research prior to recording this, but I didn't actually intend on bringing it up. Obviously, Klopp and Pep, I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head that's been at their club longer than David Moyes right now. He's had more than enough time, transfer windows and money, and not only that, flexibility. He's been allowed to bring in who he wants and to sell who he wants. He's had complete control over buying and selling players at West Ham United. So to go 3.5 years, to go, I don't know, how much have we spent in that 3.5 years? 300 million? I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than that, but let's just say 300 million. He spent that, and he's got a squad of 21, 22, 23 players, and he only feels comfortable using 13 or 14. That is an admission of failure, in my opinion. It's not acceptable. And yesterday we saw a result of misman management. You look at Pablo Fornals. When we signed Fornals from Villarreal, he was this player with skills, with flair, with creativity. When you come to West Ham and we start to mould him, Moyes started to mould him into this harder working player with the defensive abilities as well. Great, he fitted David Moyes perfectly, Fornals did. But you look at him in the last couple of weeks, faced like thunder when he came off the bench against Alkmaar. That footage after the game killed me. When he was warming up at the London Stadium against Alkmaar, and there was a kid there. I assume he had a sign up for Fornals, but basically the story was the kid asked for Fornals for his shirt. After the game, Fornals went and found the kid and gave the kid his shirt. As he would, he's a nice person. Fornals 2 years ago would have ran up to that kid with a massive smile on his face, gave him a big cuddle, had a couple of pictures, gave him his shirt. Thursday there was none of that. He did it as cold as he could while being polite. He jogged up, gave the kid his shirt and jogged away again. Gave him a little cuddle, just an arm around and away with it. There was no photos, there was no smile. Remember a year ago we had Fornals picking up the microphone singing West Ham are massive. That's gone. It's gone. His personality, his character has been sucked out of him completely. So much so we got to the point yesterday where he's in the B team and he's subbed on the hour mark. He's a shadow of a player as to what we had under David Moyes. But not only that, he's a shadow of a person now, and I feel gutted for him. I find it hard to witness to some extent. And then we've got this situation with Cornet, and I was buzzing when we signed Maxwell Cornet. I thought it was a banker of a transfer. I thought, here we go, someone that's Premier League experience, has scored goals in a poor Burnley side that got relegated. He was scoring goals, setting goals up, got a bit of pace, got a bit of flair, can play in various positions. Left wing, which was our weakest starting 11 position arguably last season, because we had that for Niles and we had Ben Rama in and out of the team. There was an opportunity for Cornet to make that his own. Cover for playing up front, can play on the right, is cover for Jared Bowen. It's just not worked whatsoever. But yesterday, Ben Johnson, look at him. A year ago, he looked like he had the potential. Now, he looks terrified. He looks absolutely terrified. And yesterday, there was just this conclusion of this mismanagement of some of these players on the pitch at once. And it frustrated me. But the last thing that frustrated me yesterday was the lack of youth players. Now, before someone says about Mubama, I am aware Mubama got half an hour. That was one of the highlights of yesterday's game. But when Moyes rocked up the second time round and he started speaking about the Red Bull model, now I'm not actually going to take him literally, because to me and to a lot of you, the Red Bull model is buying players young and selling them for a profit, similar to what Brighton do, to keep it simple. To keep it very, very simple, that is what we class as a Red Bull model. Clever transfer strategy, picking out these young lads that are going to go on and become Premier League players. We can sell them, reinvest the money and go again. That is what I take it as. What I think David Moyes took it as, or meant it as, was just giving youngsters an opportunity. I think it was as simple as that. He just wants to give younger players the chance. Even today, 3.5 years later, we have got one of the oldest teams in the Premier League. Despite all that money spent, despite all that time, the transfer window, that flexibility, we've still got one of the oldest teams in the squad. Now let's accept that, because I would argue that Moyes has been justified thus far, because we finished 6th, we finished 7th, Europa League semi-final, Conference League semi-final. I would argue that he's been justified. I find it hard to disagree with his methods so far. But eventually, when you have an old squad, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And it feels like it's doing that at the minute. I seen a report last week on 6'2", stating that West Ham are set to start triggering clauses in players' contracts, and the players they were speaking about was Lucas Fabianski, Aaron Creswell, Ogbonna, Lanzini, Soufal, all coming to an end of their contract as we speak. But that article suggested they're all going to get either a new deal or West Ham are going to trigger all the clauses. Sorry, Lanzini. Right, I'm a big Lanzini fan, you know this. Yesterday he started his second Premier League game all season. The other start was on the opening game of the Premier League. Match day 1 and match day 36. We've not needed him in between. Yes, he's played the Conference League campaign, but in terms of Premier League, we've barely seen him this season. And this article is suggesting that we're waiting to trigger his clause, which is 2 years, by the way. Not 1, 2 years. And he doesn't want to be here. He couldn't make it more obvious. He's ready to go back to River Plate. He wants to go back to his boyhood club. And, you know, something I hope he goes. Good luck to him. But my point is, all those players are old. They're all old. We don't really have the money to start replacing them because of the mismanagement in previous windows. But where was the youngsters yesterday? Very rarely, very, very rarely in Premier League do you get a free hit. And it was a free hit yesterday. And if you don't think it should have been, that's okay. I accept that because there was people that weren't happy with the rotated team. I accept it. I get your point, right? But Moyes seen as a free hit. His starting 11 proves that. His starting 11 proves Moyes thought, if we lose today, it's not the end of the world. And I make him right. I agree with him. It was a free hit. Well, take advantage of it. There was no need. On the hour mark, I was genuinely disappointed to see Rice and Benrahma coming on. And I know we were trying to protect the goal difference because we don't want to get beat 4-0 and whatever. Well, tell you what, we almost did if it wasn't for Fabianski with a couple of saves. But it just felt there was a missed opportunity yesterday. Mubama shouldn't have been the only youngster on that bench. There was no reason for either one of Potts, Orford, Kelly to be on there for the centre midfield cover. There's no reason for Marshall or Kadua to come on as the winger instead of Benrahma. He could have just had an extra 3 youngsters. Where was Casey as the centre back cover? And I just thought our under 18s have had, bar 90 minutes, the most successful season you can get at that age group. They've won the Youth Cup, they've won their league, and they pushed Man City all the way in the playoff of the European football next season. They lost, they didn't quite make it. But what a fantastic, successful campaign they've had. What's the reward? Well, for one player he got half an hour, and for the rest of them they get to watch their teammate get half an hour, and that was it. Now it's a huge occasion for Mubama. Let's get that right. It's a huge, huge occasion for him, and I'm quite confident Mubama will make it. And I don't say that often. I'm not one of the people that sees someone from the under 21s play well and think brilliant, he's going to do it at West Ham. I'm not one of those people. I've seen some of the players for the under 18s. There's 1 or 2 of those in the under 18s. I don't think we will see play a first team game for West Ham. I'm not going to name names. It's unfair and it's unnecessary. There's 1 or 2 I look at and I think they've got potential to make it, but they're few and far between. But Mubama's certainly one of those. I think he'll be all right. But there was just an opportunity yesterday. And yesterday's game just felt like all the reasons why I'm not a big fan of David Moyes came together. Because while we heavily rotated, and I accept that, what is difficult is we played the same way. That midfield was set up with Downs, Lanzini and Souček the exact same way it's set up with Rice, Paqueta and Souček. Come on, you tell me that we expect Downs to do what Rice does and Lanzini to do what Paqueta does? I'm not sure about that. By the way, some of those players did not play well yesterday. I'm not saying it's all on Moyes, but it's a David Moyes video rather than a review of the game. But the attack, Fornals was deployed the same way we deployed Javid Bowen. You couldn't get more opposite. In the first half especially, Ings was drifting out to the left channel while Cornet went through the middle. They were doing what Benrahma and Antonio do. We had the exact same way of playing for 2 completely different sets of players. And I just found it ludicrous. And I just thought, this is why I struggle with David Moyes. And I hope, my dream scenario right now is we win the Conference League. And do you know something? I hope David Moyes resigns. No, not to save the club for a few bob, but more for him. He deserves it. He deserves to go away with a round of applause. He deserves to go out, and he will be, in my eyes, a hero. If we win that Conference League, he becomes a hero. And David Moyes, what's that saying? If a hero sticks around long enough, he'll become the villain. Whatever that saying is, word for word. He's sort of done that this season. He's gone from hero to villain. But should we win this trophy, he puts himself back up on that status. go out now. Just go out now. Because I've got little optimism that next season we will do well. We'll obviously be in the Europa League. Great, fantastic, really looking forward to it. But this season, in a lesser competition in the Conference League, he has struggled to manage his squad. I've got no confidence he's going to be able to manage it in the Europa League against tougher opponents. I've got none. He managed it last season, and sometimes I look back and think, I don't know how. I don't know how he managed to get us to 7th and the semi-finals of the Europa League. By the end of the season, we were goosed, to use David Moyes. By the way, that's a Scottish name for knackered, right? I've seen people say, well, that means poking the bum or something like that. Goosed means prod in someone's butt. I've never heard it in that context, right? So when David Moyes said the players are goosed, I thought David Moyes said the players are knackered. Goosed in Scotland means tired, right? So there's no sexual abuse going on from David Moyes. Don't worry about it. But in David Moyes' words, the players are goosed. They certainly were last season and have been this season. But anyway, I didn't mean to rant. Bloody hell, 20 minutes. I'm sorry. This is only meant to be a 15-minute video. But that's the report from Sky Sports that David Moyes is going to be here next season as manager of West Ham. I believe it, but I don't bloody like it. Anyway, I'm going to disappear. If you've enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new to Hammers Chat, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.